So it's game night, and you know what happens. You've just finished playing that first game, and there's that lull, that little bit of a lull. And you say, hey, what do you guys want to play? And they have this moment.
I mean, there's, this stuff and this stuff right here. Whatever you think. I'm good with anything, or whatever you want to do. Me? I'm good with anything, man. What do you want to play? I'm anything. I'm good with anything. So, maybe you pick. I mean, I have no agenda, so whatever you guys want to play. I mean, we can play anything, totally anything. I'm fine. I'm good with anything. Let's see, how does this board set up? Okay, good. 6 of us? All right, cool.
Don't you hate it when that happens? Wouldn't you like it if there was something you could do that played up to 8 people? Preferably, actually, 8 people is the best number to play this game. That was exciting, riveting, and deep. Not just a party game. Not that there's anything wrong with party games, but something that there was more of a choice of things to do. All these different things. But this one allows each person to have their own unique role and play things in a very dramatic, high-intensity situation against one another. What if such a game existed? And what if such a game gave you such an incredible simulated feeling of being on a submarine that they just named it Captain Sonar? Because they did. Let's take a look. So you may be thinking, what in the world is going on behind me here? If you're not familiar with Captain Sonar, this was a smash hit of last year that really blew a lot of party games out of the water because this is not a party game, but it has a player count up to 8 players. So let's take a look at what's going on back here. You can see this is the board setup, the game setup for Captain Sonar. It looks like some sort of weird Dungeons and Dragons thing with the big player DM screens in the middle, right? But each player has a different role. See, this is interesting. Here's the captain's role. Over here is the radio operator, missing one important aspect, which I'll talk about in a minute. Over here is the first mate, and then the engineer. All of them have these different sheets. You'll notice they're two-sided because this is the turn-based, and this is the real-time. What that means is you're playing an 8-person game at the same time, simultaneous head-to-head against each other, 4-on-4, trying to sink their submarine. Imagine Battleship on steroids, the modern-day treatment to Battleship. That is what Captain Steroids, that is what Captain Sonar is all about, is that modern-day Battleship feel. So how does it play? What do? It's actually very simple. Very few rules. Let's take a look at the 4 different positions that each side takes, and then we'll kind of come back at the end and talk about what happens with this. So in keeping with the spirits of the real-time function of the game, we're going to do it real time. I'm going to go job to job to job and show you how each one works. Notice that the radio operator gets a very special piece of plastic. This is so you can mark the path of where you think the enemy is. For instance, the captain's going to be calling out north. So let's say you just start here random, okay? You will listen to the captain. They'll call it north. North. You'll listen to their captain, not yours. East. 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 South. Well, you know that the rules state that they can't cross over islands, they can't cross their own paths, so you go, okay, well, they clearly didn't start there, maybe they're here. They say south again, well, you know, okay, well, they're definitely not there. So you kind of just keep moving this around across the board to wherever it fits, and eventually you'll get enough of these drawn out where you can get a pretty determined path where you think they might be. So you know, for instance, that maybe they're here. They might very well be here because your path just kind of lines up with what's on the board. This is Bravo map. It's a little bit harder because there's so few islands, but the Alpha map has a lot more islands, so you can kind of slide this around and see which positions they could be. We know they can't be there, can't be there, can't be there. They could be here. This could be a position. You know they can't track back across themselves. So that's what the radio operator does. They listen for the other team's captain, marks where it goes, and try to figure it out. And they say, hey, I think they're here. Let's launch a bomb. Which goes over to the captain's job. Right here, the captain's job. The captain also has a map. Check this out. Same map, exact same thing. And the difference is they're going to be marking where they actually are going. So he says north. This team's captain says north. North, east, north, west. Now, they wouldn't be doing it that quickly. You say, why? Why would they not be doing it that quickly? Here's why they wouldn't be doing it that quickly. Because over here on the other jobs, it matters which way you're going, and we'll get there in a minute. The captain's also responsible for, and I'll show you on this thing, these mines and torpedoes. They can also call for silence, drones, sonar, and all that sort of stuff. The captain's responsible. He'll say, stop! launch a mine or launch a torpedo at this position. And if it hits, it does 2 damage. If it's a direct hit, it does 2 damage. Then if it's a close hit, we'll show you that in just a second, indirect hit. But that's the captain's job, is to chart the course for their sub. The captain can call surface. They erase their path so that you can cross those same places again. And you have to tell the other team where you are. So if you're in 5, you have to say, we're in 5, we're surfacing. So you quickly race to get your ship repaired so you can dive back down. And I'll tell you how that works in a minute. Over here, let's look at the first mate. The first mate's job is very simple. The first mate is in charge of all of these different systems on the ship, sorry. So when the captain calls out north, the first mate has an opportunity to mark off one of these little spots. 1 per direction. So he says north, you mark off 1, west another one, east another one. Once a section is filled, you can use it. So let's say this is filled, you say torpedo. The captain says stop, we're gonna launch torpedo. You would then erase all of these, tell where to hit. It shows you kind of where these things hit, how they play, and what they do, and a quick reminder for what these things do. You then are also responsible as the first mate for keeping track of damage up here. Pretty simple, that's what it's for. Last but not least, the engineer. Now this one is a puzzle within a puzzle within a puzzle. You're playing a completely different game down here as engineer, and I really like it. I'm gonna come down here so the light doesn't glare cut as bad. Playing a different game down here. See how this little charted path is? This looks like an iOS app or something like that. The point of this is, each time the captain says a direction, north, west, south, or east, you have to mark off one of these systems. If there's an X on any one of these systems, these cannot be used the entire time that there's an X. So you say, well, how do you clear them? Well, do you see how these are connected by a chain here? For instance, all of these orange ones are connected by a chain, just like that. So once you do all of these, you can clear it out. So this is where you're gonna need communication. If you wanna win this game, communication is key. Ask me how I know, because I've lost more times than I've won. You would tell the captain, if you had this situation right here going on, hey, we need to go north. We really need to go north right now. So then you do that, boom, you're cleared, and then you can go do your silence, which lets you move 4 spaces away. Pretty incredible thing. You say, okay, what about that surfacing thing you mentioned? You mentioned it was a race. So if you need to surface and heal, here's what happens. See this diagram? Each one of these 4 sections, you have to trace it carefully with your pencil, pen, whatever it's called, Sharpie marker, dry erase marker, without touching any of these lines. Obviously you'd be doing it faster, but I'm doing this one-handed. Once you get it all the way done with yourself, you initial yours, pass it to the next person down the line. They'll do one, they'll do one, they'll do one. To the last person, the engineer sitting across from the other person's engineer will say, engineer, check this. They'll look at it, make sure you didn't touch any of the lines, make sure your lines are fair. They'll say, yes, you're good. You then clear away everything, all the damage down here, and you're good to go. It doesn't clear damage, but it clears this. The reason I mention this is these nuclear ones, they can't really be healed, and neither can these. The only way these can be healed is if you surface. And so that's the beauty of it. If you have all these nuclear symbols X'd out, you will take a damage to the ship. You only get 4 damage, so you definitely don't want to do that. And that is the 4 jobs of Captain Sonar. That's how it plays, just like that. Now I know what you're thinking. To be such an incredibly popular game that plays 8 people in a very high, intense, fast, fun game, that was a simple review. You're right, because it is actually a very simple game. It comes with all these accoutrements, so everybody gets their own pens with the word Captain Sonar written on it, so that's a lovely little feature. Everybody gets their little own board here. There are multiple scenarios to try. You can do A, B, C, D, and E, I believe. There's that many different scenarios, plus expansions are already announced. You say, well, why is it so popular? Here's why. Because it's just as tense as it sounds. You literally, especially if you're the radio operator, you're desperately trying to find where the other person is. You are, if you mess up, it's on you. If you say, hey, I know they're here, launch a torpedo here, and you launch a torpedo and hit nothing, then you're like, oh no, I have no clue where they are. And then here's the worst part. You've got them dead to rights. You know exactly where they are on this sheet. You say, hey, they're at J12, and they say, stop, silence. Then they get to move 4 spaces in any direction without saying it out loud. Then you're just totally jacked up at that point. That wrecked my game one time. We just hit with a direct hit and indirect hit, I believe, and they only had 1 health left. They went silent, or maybe either way, they had 2 health left. They went silent, came back and took bam, 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 hit us with all 4 and just destroyed us, wrecked us, sunk us. It was horrible, but it was that much fun because all of that excitement, all of that tension of going head to head with each different job, and it's fun because it doesn't really take that long. It says I think 40 minutes on the box, but you can get this done really, really fast. Does it say 40 minutes or 20 minutes? Either way, it's a quick game because it moves so much faster and it moves at your own pace. If you don't want to do the real time, you can do the turn by turn basis on the back, which is also a cool way to play. Some of the powers change up a little bit, and the rules book tells you that. But that real time experience, when you're limited to games like, Zombie 15 or Escape the Curse of the Temple, which are all great games, and then you see this as a real time game that plays 8 people, it's a showstopper. When people come in and see this setup at game night, it's a showstopper. People go, I've got to play that game. And it's that much fun. I think when we played this, it's always been multiple times back to back to back to back. Also, one little tip, if I should say, there are tons of royalty free on YouTube and places like that. Sonar sounds. If you can get that Sonar sound in the background the whole time, it is a beautiful thing. You really get transformed. Even if you're sitting at a kitchen table or a dining room table, you start to feel like we're in a sub and we're gonna sink. Being from the Gulf Coast, we have a submarine here that you can go and tour. I can't imagine the actual stress of being on a submarine for a living, knowing that the other people are just right outside your door and that you're on this tiny little tin can basically, and just that little bit of air. The stress that has to be there, I can't fathom that. And this game just captures just the easiest little bit of that theme and puts it into a board game with your friends, 8 people. It's really the way to play. That's the only caveat that I mentioned at the beginning. You need to play this with 8 people because if you don't play this with 8 people, certain jobs have to combine. And then once you get down to about 4 people, I think, you have to do the real-time mode or the turn-by-turn mode. So it's one of those things where the 8-person limit is the best way to play it. It's not a bad game otherwise, but the 8-person game is where this was designed for, clearly. It's just so much fun, just going at each other. Definitely try Captain Sonar. If you can get your hands on it, it's incredible. It's worth the wait. If you've got to wait a turn to play, it doesn't matter. Just wait, play it. It's that much fun. So for more info, check out the latest retro on Twitter. I'm Bryan Drake with the Dice Tower. We'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.